Hello ladies and gentlemen, Adam Steele here, and it's been a while since we've done a viewers comments video. I have been absolutely rushed off my feet, but today we are at Studio B, that is to say I'm actually filming this at my house on the green screen, and I am waiting for a baby, so to speak. That my partner Mickey is now 9 months and 3 days pregnant. She's kind of overdue, so I have to be at home waiting because we're going to be going to the hospital at any point. But in the meantime, I'm kind of sat here twiddling my thumbs. So I found some time to look at some of your guys' comments, and we're going to get right into some responses. Here we go. Okay, first one's a technical one today, from Kovacs Eugen, saying if the main board does not have Thunderbolt, you can always get a PCIe to Thunderbolt card. Now that's not true, really. It's something I have to respond to here, that there are Thunderbolt cards out there, but the problem really is the ones I've seen, they match up with a specific motherboard or a specific manufacturer's very select few motherboards. And so you have to be careful because the vast majority of motherboards out there will not be compatible with these Thunderbolt cards. Even though Thunderbolt in and of itself is just an extension really of PCIe, it's just getting that kind of motherboard direct connection out into a cable. There seems to be more to it in terms of compatibility, so you really have to be careful, so look out for that if that's your plan. Next one from Synaptic. It was about the vlog that I did, Day in the Life of a Studio Engineer, saying he loved it. It's cool to see the process, because what you're doing is what I wished I was doing, sort of a long lost dream, yeah. So I appreciate that, and that's something that I was really kind of hoping, and I'm going to see if I can do more of those kind of vlog style videos. I've now got one of those Gorilla Pod style things to hold my phone on, which has made a massive difference because the whole shaky camera thing is just... It's kind of unwatchable really, so I'm thinking at some point in the future as well I'm going to upgrade that to a proper vlogging style camera. Don't worry, the channel is not going to be changing into a vlog channel. That's going to be quite occasional. It's going to be the stuff that you wouldn't really script a video for. It's going to be things that I would be doing anyway, like going out for my birthday for a specific type of coffee. I mean, that sounds really kind of off topic, but it's something I'm very passionate about, and I want to share things that I'm passionate about with you. And the Day in the Life of a Studio Engineer, one that I'm going to be filming soon, is we're going to move around all the setup of our live room in the studio. It's actually kind of simple in principle, because if you've ever seen our live room, and you'll see it behind me in any of these shots, there's a table in the middle, there's a mixing desk to the left, and a big wooden console to the right. And that big console I'm going to put in the middle, because I'm finding that all my cables are too long. I'm getting issues, especially on the digital side. So I'm going to completely change everything. I'm taking the patch bays out. I've decided to go super modern and get rid of all the patch bay stuff. I'm going to be using an ADAT machine, you know, an old like ADAT, not just as in the optical type, but ADAT as in the actual SVHS video cassettes that you would record 8 channels of audio on. I've got one of those, and I'm going to use that as like an output device. It's kind of an idea I came up with, where I'm going to be giving everyone who's in the studio their own custom headphone mix, and giving them the ability through Reaper to change their own mix without me having to spend thousands on custom hardware. Which is another option that I've seen, but I want to be able to do it without breaking the bank. So I've got everything in for that. So that's going to be fairly vlog style. And there's going to be, yeah, those are the kind of videos where it would make more sense to just have a camera running and have someone hold it rather than, you know, making it a snappy, polished edit. Sometimes it's good to be more human. Next one on the RME Radar video. Thanks for the content. What's your opinion on running an Allen Heath Z420 or a Soundcraft 24 channel into a couple of synced Behringer ADA 8200s via ADAT into a radar? I make hip hop tunes, so I use the in and outs mainly at line level, not as much mic usage as band recording. if you don't use them for mic level, I would say don't bother with the Allen & Heath or the Soundcraft at all. The ADA 8200 from Behringer is not a set of converters per se, it's a set of preamps with conversion built in. I mean, they're not particularly expensive, they're not particularly high end, but that's what they do. They already have microphone and line level preamps in them, so if you're not going for like a vintage style enhancement of the tone using a mixing desk, I would say just go straight to those Behringers, because otherwise you are putting extra gear into the signal chain that arguably isn't adding any quality to the sound, is potentially degrading the sound through extra steps, and is just making your setup more complicated. If the Allen & Heath or the Soundcraft adds a pleasant sound, then maybe there's some benefit to that. But if it's a purely technical rig in terms of just getting the sound from your synths into the computer, I would use as little equipment as possible and do it that way. That's just the way that I personally would do it. Question from Amir Ahmadi on picking PC parts for building. He's a first-time builder, leaning in a different direction with his rig, looking to use rig for video production, and would like to go rack mount. Plan to use the PC in live pro audio settings and streaming. At least I think I do, I'm not sure if it'll be the most advantageous. I have to ask, why rack mount? The only reason that I personally, with my main computer, went rack mount is that I have a big wooden console that we took from one of the old BBC buildings in Manchester before it was knocked down, and it had loads of space in there that was already 19-inch rack and just kind of needed filling. So why, when I'm building a new PC, would I have a tower taking up space when I could have that put into a rack I already owned? For most people, I can't see rack mount being any benefit. It's the kind of thing where unless you have loads of rack mount hardware and intend to put the computer in that setup for cleanliness, it's kind of a detriment because it limits you in terms of the cases you can use. The computer would have to be sideways, which may or may not be a good or a bad thing depending on the way you've got your airflow set up. It might make no difference. It limits you in terms of silencing the case, because if you've got anything in there like fans and you're trying to do audio production, you'll probably want things like acoustic panels in there. A lot of cases you can get have some sort of acoustic dampening of some kind, which does go a long way when you're trying to mix and you've not got a vacuum cleaner in your ear going. So if you're using it for video production, I mean, if you plan to use it in live pro audio settings, that sounds to me like you don't really know what you want to use it for. And most computers, if they're built to a reasonable spec, are good all-rounders. Any of the computers that I spec out on this channel, that I say, here's your budget range, here's your mid-range, here's the high range, apart from the graphics cards, which are the main difference, really, because audio guys don't need graphics cards, but if you're going to do video production, you probably need something middle of the road or just a little better than that, maybe. Unless you're doing insane editing, in which case you really should be talking to professional builders, arguably. Anyway, yeah, I wouldn't change a thing apart from rack mount cases on what I'm doing. I mean, really do some soul searching with rack mount. It looks cool. If you have a rack that it's ready to go in, that's awesome as well. But the other thing is, if you're going to take a rack mount computer out live, you're going to need to buy a rack to put it in, which means that it'll probably cost you more by the time you've bought a decent rack, because in a studio, a rack can be two nice panels of wood held together with some rack mount strip. It doesn't have to be expensive. For live, if you're going to take something out in a rack, it can get damaged very easily, which means you need very high quality, tough, durable rack mount cases, which get expensive quickly. And if you're taking computers out, especially desktop grade computers with heavy components in. They're quite fragile, which means that you would need to put that computer in a rack mount case with an internal shock mount, and those get really expensive. You can get them and they do a job, but there's a reason why mostly guys going out doing live work have high-end laptops. And the reason is that because they're lighter, even though they're high-end, you can safely store them in a much smaller space, and then whatever you have to connect to them, you have to connect to them. But yeah, live, unless you've got a big touring rig that's properly shock mounted, that's our cue to re-roll the camera, then yeah, just be careful with that. Question from Andrew Cook, who says, I love your tutorials, can you do more stuff on Reaper? Like tips, tricks, sidechain stuff processing? Yes. I am fully intending to go through what I know about Reaper and make myself a little list of tutorials to make. It's been a while since I've made kind of the big 5. If you've not seen some of the later Reaper tutorials in the series, go ahead and check those out. I know that a lot of guys just watched part 1. That's evident by the fact that at the time of filming this, part 1 of the Reaper tutorial series has over 90,000 views, which is huge for our channel. And part 5 has less than 1,000, which is a big drop off. So I really have to wrestle with kind of, are people going to watch it? That's the first part, but yeah, I like the whole thing like sidechaining. I don't do sidechaining most of the time. There are a few circumstances where I do, but most of the time I think it's a backward step. It doesn't do what people want it to do, and they end up going back and learning how to mix properly, quote unquote. Unless it's something like house music. Generally I find that it only causes damage in a mix, but that's just me. Let's move on. A couple of different quotes on responses on the video that I made about coffee. One specifically coffee related from Marty V. Where's your thermometer? Water should be about 85 degrees Celsius for good coffee. Yes, I know. And for any other coffee enthusiast, temperature is important. You don't want to burn your coffee. I have been making coffee to my tastes for long enough now that I don't use a thermometer, because to me it's like stabilizers on a bicycle. That I boil the kettle, I allow it to click at exactly 100 degrees, then I let it sit for the right amount of time for the temperature to go down. I know how long it takes for my particular kettle to get down to another temperature. And yeah, for me, don't worry about it. That you are absolutely right. If you're not familiar with getting consistency with your coffee brew, do get a thermometer in there. For me, I do use water at that temperature. I've been doing it long enough that I kind of freehand it. And if it's a little over or a little under, that's on me. And it's only a coffee I'm making for myself anyway, so if it's slightly wrong, I just remember that and make it better next time. If I was serving it in a professional environment, I would definitely use a thermometer, because consistency when serving a customer is key. And a question from the Seventh Hand. It's not really a question, is it? Make a new video on PC builds for music and video production, please. Well, I already made one this year, and honestly, PC and Mac hardware doesn't move that quickly anymore. It really doesn't. We're still waiting on the next generation of Intel chips to come out. I'm pretty sure that the last video that I did, the 2018 update, was using the 8700, so the latest Intel chipsets, and the latest Ryzen chipsets, the Ryzen 2, is not out yet, so there's no benefit to me making an update yet. As soon as things change and as soon as prices go down, I might make an update. I definitely want to do more in terms of working on audio production, PC and even Mac, although less Mac these days, specific builds. And I might start even trying to talk to manufacturers about doing builds on the channel, because as much as there are tech YouTube channels out there, none of them really do this for audio production. So it might be worth me talking to somebody about that. I'll see who responds. In the meantime, I'm gonna drink some more of my coffee. Question from Leo Rodia on the part of the Reaper tutorial series that I was saying that hardly anybody has watched, but Leo obviously has, so thank you. It's remote controlling Reaper with any device, so any iOS or Android or laptop or any tablet kind of device. He says, could I use this to do multiple monitor mixing in the studio? Yes you can. One of the things in Reaper in the web control was called More Me, and that's exactly what I've been talking about I'm going to make a video on giving everybody in my studio their own headphone mix. And the way that I've done that is the core of my studio is an RME RADAT, which I've talked about before, which if you're running at 44 or 48 kilohertz, you get 36 in, 36 out. That's a lot. Now, the inputs, obviously I use those because I have a lot of channels coming in, it's a studio, but the outputs, once you've done all my separate monitors and a headphone output and that kind of thing, you've still got quite a lot of channels left over. Unless you're using it like an analog board mix, which is what I used to do and I've stopped doing. So, what I'm going to be doing now is I'm using old ADAT machines, which all have 8 outputs on them, so I'm going to take the digital signal and send it separately to a headphone amplifier, which has got a separate input for each stereo pair, so that's 4 headphone mixes right there. And I'm going to use this Reaper setup so that everybody in the studio, and there is a 5th headphone output that's already wired, so that's 5 headphone outputs in the studio so that the musicians can change more of this, less of this, mute this, hear this on their own device, or if we're talking about network security, on a device that I give them, because I have very old iPad minis in the studio which are like way out of date now. They're like I think they're the oldest ones, so they're worth nothing. But if I just put that in their hands in a hard case and just go, here's your volumes, change this, happy days, that should work fine. And there's going to be a detailed video on that from me. Oh, here's some guy called TKJ who obviously hasn't been watching everything on the channel. He's just tuned into this video and wanted to have an opinion. So here's what he says. No, you're not using Pro Tools because you don't want to learn a quicker and better DAW, that's all. It is the era of Pro Tools crashing, you talking 15 or more years ago, when computers wasn't that fast. Now they are. PT only has gotten better and better. Right, okay. So a bit of background history on me. I have been working with DAWs for about 15 years, maybe 20. I'm in my 30s now. I've been doing this a while. And originally I was trained to use Cubase and Pro Tools. So I've been using Pro Tools a long time. I know how to use it in depth. I know how to use it well. I still have a lot of issues with Pro Tools, and when I was told about Reaper and found out about it, I started using it, and eventually over the next year or two I moved almost completely away to Reaper. That was 7 or 8 years ago. I still have a recent copy of Pro Tools in the studio. It's a business tool, it costs me money, I'd rather not buy it, but I keep up to date. Because quite often a client will come into the studio with a half-made Pro Tools project, and I have to be able to accommodate that, and I generally will just finish that mix in Pro Tools. It takes me a little longer, but probably takes me less time than it would have to export all the separate parts to a different DAW. I am fully aware of how Pro Tools works, my friend, and Reaper is much more efficient, and Pro Tools 2018 still crashes a lot. And I can go on to the latest version of OS X or the latest version of Windows 10. Guess what? Reaper works and is supported, and Pro Tools is not. And there's always been an issue with Pro Tools being 6 to 12 months behind OS X in terms of official support, which is not good enough in my opinion, because if you're changing the entire code base of the operating system, which Apple aren't, there shouldn't be any issues. But Pro Tools has been changed underneath over and over and over and over, and it still has some serious bugs. And they're adding new features all the time, and that's fine. And some of the features they should have been there years ago, and they're there now, and that's okay. And it's usable, but it's just not the one for me anymore. Sorry. So that's all we've got time for today. Stick around for more videos coming. I've got a lot of editing to do this week while I'm sat at the laptop waiting for my little baby to arrive. So hopefully you enjoyed this, and we'll see you guys in the next video. This video has been brought to you by you, sponsored through Patreon. So if any of you guys could help the channel, that would be massively appreciated. Check out our Patreon through the button that's on the screen there, and that's the kind of thing that helps us to stay unbiased, helps us to stay neutral, and to be able to review equipment and do demos that are not paid for by companies. So that means that we can talk about this stuff openly and tell you what we think is the best without any sort of bias. So if you check that out, that would be massively appreciated. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this, feel free to check out our other videos, as you can find here, or check out our Facebook and Twitter, or our Patreon page, which helps us to make more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.